Okay, let's get it clear. Is 2026 the year that you finally get your business making consistent sales and scaling up? Well, to quote a sports analogy, put me in, coach. I would love to mentor you through that process of establishing your business's foundations so that it is profitable, aligned, and sustainable. And my Takeoff mentorship program is the perfect way for us to do that together. Not only that, the price of the program is going up at the end of February for the first time since 2021. So make sure that you go and check out Takeoff at tashcorbin.com/takeoff before the price rise. I would love to mentor you through this process, help you to establish your consistent, streamlined strategy that attracts leads and converts them into high-ticket clients so that you can finally be paid what you deserve by this amazing business that you are building. Find out more, including the full curriculum, at tashcorbin.com/takeoff. And of course, if you've got any questions or want to discuss whether it's the right fit for you, send me an email or a DM. I'm happy to have a chat. If you looked at the title of this podcast before clicking play, chances are you felt a little awkward just reading the title, because in today's episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast, I'm going to talk to you about how to sell to friends without it being awkward and uncomfortable and weird. And this is a really tricky topic because I think we've all probably had at least one person try to recruit us to their network marketing or MLM company. And we've probably also been on the receiving end of one of those awkward sales pitches, whether it's from a friend or a family member or someone close to us. We'd prefer not to do that to us. And so that can be very off-putting then when you first start a business, and the prevailing advice is your first sales will come from your network or your network's network. And so how do you do that without it being awkward and uncomfortable? Lucky for you, that's exactly what we're covering in today's episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast. And I've got a special offer to help you with making those initial sales as well. So make sure you come and check out the show notes of today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/505, because this is episode number 505. Let's dive in. Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money, and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Now, I'm going to share this podcast episode through the lens of friends, but it actually applies to all sales conversations and all sales strategy, whether that be selling to friends, family, people in your network, or people that you've just met as well. So I don't know about you, but I feel quite awkward when it comes to sales pitches. I feel quite uncomfortable if I feel like I'm selling at someone or selling to someone who I don't know how they're receiving it. I don't know whether they think I'm like pushing a boundary or getting a little too comfortable or what, right? Like if I don't have that feedback loop, if I don't know that they really want to hear this from me, that is like just the recipe for the worst, most uncomfortable feeling in the world. In fact, I can feel my neck getting hot just thinking about it right now. And I do get the rash of despair. That is something that I've talked about in previous sales trainings and webinars that I've run before, where when I did my first few sales conversations in my business, I would get the rash of despair. And for some reason, the rash of despair originates in my cleavage. So I could see when I was on Skype calls with people, because when I started my business back in my day, we didn't have Zoom, we had Skype, and I'd be on a Skype video call with people. and I'd get to the sales pitch part and I could literally see in my video, and I'd get a little bit distracted by it, this red rash growing out of my cleavage and covering my entire chest, and then it would go up my neck. And if I hadn't got through the sales pitch quickly enough, sometimes it would cover my face and my face would look all blotchy and almost bluey, purpley colored because I felt so uncomfortable making a sales pitch, right? So I wanted to share that context with you because I think if you've ever had a sales conversation with me, especially since my first 6 months of business, if you've ever seen me in sales pitch mode, you might assume it's a very comfy place for me. And the truth of the matter is that actually the sales pitch part itself is not naturally comfortable to me. It's something that I do feel quite awkward about, but I've crafted my strategy and my approach to sales in a way that I can ensure that I'm limiting that sense of awkwardness. I'm limiting that discomfort that I feel. And so, even though this episode is about how to sell to friends without it being awkward, this applies to any of your sales conversations or making sales pitches where you feel that sense of real awkwardness, okay? So it's going to help you in all layers, even if you have a firm boundary that you would never sell to your friends. That boundary could be a limitation, and I want to talk about it. But even if there's, for some reason, you never could or would sell to friends, let's say you're a psychologist and you can't have a personal relationship with people outside of your work. So even if you're feeling uncomfortable about pitching or making sales or having sales conversations, and it's not necessarily about the relationship that you have with the person, I'm going to help you feel more comfortable, and I'm going to help you to ensure that it doesn't feel as awkward and that the level of awkwardness and discomfort you feel starts to dissipate the more and more you do it. So the primary reason why I don't come across as being awkward, embarrassed, or uncomfortable when I'm in sales mode, when I'm selling. And the primary reason why I know I can sell to friends without being uncomfortable or awkward about it is because I don't pitch to anyone unless I'm confident they're keen to hear that pitch. And that is one of the principles of consent-based marketing in action, in practical application. But there is a risk, if you hear me say that then you assume the only time I sell to friends is when they initiate, when they ask me, when they ask if I can help them with something, or they are specifically asking, hey, what's this thing you're doing? Can you help me? And that's not the case. And it's also not the case in my business either with broader sales conversations. I don't wait for people to ask for me to give them my sales pitch, because also I would say in the first 6 months of my business, the people who specifically asked my sales pitch were often people who were shopping around, and it kind of came off as a bit of an ego thing. It's like, okay, come on, give me your sales pitch. And actually, I wasn't confident that they were actually wanting to hear my sales pitch. I wasn't confident that they were actually intending to buy something from me. I felt even more awkward and uncomfortable when someone said that to me, right? Okay, give me a sales pitch. It's different if someone said, oh, okay, so how do we keep working together? What are the options for us to work together? That's someone asking me for a sales pitch, but they're not explicitly asking for it. They're asking how we can work together. But I don't wait for anyone to ask. And in fact, if I can see that the biggest portion of my leads is coming from them asking, not from me initiating, I know I've actually put my foot on the brake when it comes to lead generation and making sales. So how do we bridge that gap then? If we're not just sitting back waiting for people to ask for a sales pitch, how do you proactively sell to people but only make the sales pitch when you're confident that they are actually keen to hear it? The thing that I consistently remind myself and my clients is that as the business owner, as the salesperson, as the marketer, it's my job to collect the information and ascertain where someone is at in the process. That's my job. It's my job to make the invitation and to ask. But knowing that it's your job alone isn't necessarily enough, because if you know it's your job to make the invitation and ask, if you know that it's your job to collect the information you need to ascertain where they're at, does that mean you just message all of your friends and ask them if they would like to hear a sales pitch? That still feels really awkward to me, right? That still feels so uncomfortable. I mean, just stop for a moment and imagine reaching out to your best friend who's not in business, who's not familiar with your business, your closest friend who's not a client, and asking them on Messenger, hey, I just wanted to check in and see, are you following my business? Are you familiar with my offers? Would you like me to tell you how I might be able to help you as a business coach or as a messaging mentor or as a feng shui practitioner or whatever it is that you are, right? Like, would you imagine sending that message to a friend? Even then, you're making the ask, right? But you don't know whether they are comfortable or excited or keen to hear even that ask. So it's not necessarily about just asking people if they want to hear about how you can work together. It is one of the most consistent phrases and questions that I do ask of my hot leads. Hey, it sounds like you could use some help with this. Would you like me to tell you how I could help, right? Definitely. But for me, the questions I ask before I get to that point are far more critical. And they are the things that reduce the awkwardness and the embarrassment and the anxiety. They are the things that reduce the discomfort. The problem is that most people have a really big gap. They are either really pushy and needy and spamming disinterested people and feeling a bit uncomfortable and awkward and horrible about that, but they're doing it because someone told them that they had to and that's what they do. I see this a lot when people try to DM sell me, and I push back and I say, why on earth did you just try and pitch that to me? And they'll say, oh, I'm just doing this coaching program and I've been challenged to send messages to 50 people. And I was like, gosh, like, number one, get a better coach. But number two, is it actually working? Like, this is gross, right? And so the problem is that a lot of people convince themselves or are being convinced by very terrible sales mentors that this is how you do it. You friend request strangers on the internet, or you get to know as many people as possible in the most generic, surface level way. And then at some point you slide into their DMs and ask a question or make a pitch or, try and plant a seed to get them to take the bait. And it literally feels like fishing. It literally feels like pH fishing. And it's so low conversion and it's so low in its effectiveness that it requires masses of volumes. And I think sometimes that can then help you to be a bit disconnected from it. So some people do get very comfortable with it. I won't go too far down this rabbit hole because it's a whole nother conversation, but it is a big red flag to me when someone has 5,000 friends on Facebook, because for me, I'm like, there's no way they could have 5,000 friends. They're not in a relationship with those 5,000 people. They don't know those 5,000 people. So why are they friends on Facebook? And then it's like, well, they're friends because they want to grow their network to sell to them. They're friends because they're using the strategy that gets taught that you friend request anyone who interacts with you on Facebook and you post on that profile, or you then make that awkward DM slide. And I'm just not interested in any of that, either as a recipient or as a user of that strategy. I do not do either of those things. And so that problem of having the big gap either goes to that side, which is now I need to be friends with everyone and I'm going to be DM sliding, or I'm going to try and ingratiate myself with someone in a way that's like really reassuring that I don't want to sell to them, but ultimately the main motivator is I do. And so it creates this energetic misalignment. It creates this like real, like for me, I'm not very good at masking like that. I'm not very good at pretending. What you see is what you get. Who you get is who you get. And so for me, it just feels really out of alignment, and that's what creates uncomfortable, awkward kind of feelings, because I'm like, oh, I'm friends with you because I want to use you, or I'm friends with you because I want to sell to you, but I don't know if you want to be sold to. I don't know if you're interested in being my client. I don't even know what's going on for you, right? Like, no, thank you. And so either you're in that like pushy, ingratiating yourself, like maybe it's a little bit misleading. Maybe it's not misleading at all. You're very open about it. But in order for it to have the numbers that you need, because it's so low conversion, you have to kind of treat a lot of people with a little bit of disconnect, a little bit of disdain almost. Like you need to be comfortable with basically DM sliding and selling. I don't feel comfortable with that. Or it goes the other way where you're so unsure and so worried that your friends don't even know what it is that you do, because you're so worried about being salesy with them or crossing that line that you're almost keeping it a secret. And that's not good either. The reality is, especially for service-based businesses, and especially if you're starting lean, the majority of your early sales will be to your network or your network's network. And so knowing how to have those connections and sell to people that are within your network or your network's network is a really valuable thing, but people are either all the way one way or all the way the other. And actually, using consent-based marketing strategies is the antidote to needing to be on either of those extremes. So, just to recap where we've got to, the reason why I feel so comfortable and look comfortable in sales and sales pitching is because I don't ever pitch to someone unless I'm really confident that they're keen to hear it. The reason why I have developed my strategy to be able to ascertain that is because I know it's my job. My job is to make the invitation. My job is to ascertain where they're at and their level of interest before going into the sales pitch or the sales process. And therefore, I have been very diligent in diagnosing and assessing and learning how to get that information in a way that's really helpful and connecting, and in a way that is powerful and effective and helpful for both of us. And it can be summed up in the client attraction process. So the client attraction process is reach, nurture, invite, convert. And for a lot of people, the missing big gap in their sales process is nurture, invite, and particularly knowing how to do that one-on-one. So they are actually not too uncomfortable with sharing on their personal profile or on their LinkedIn or on places where their friends might see it, advertising, right? They're not too uncomfortable with that. They might share a celebration that they've had a certain success in their business. They might share a blog post they've written or a podcast they are a guest on, or they'll share a sales pitch and say, hey, any of my friends, if you're interested in coming on this retreat, here's the details. You're welcome to come along as well. So because it's very disconnected, that part they might not feel so uncomfortable about. But if I was to then say, okay, now who in your network might actually be considering that offer, they have no idea. Right? There's a huge gap. They can reach people and they can make a sales pitch out on the internet and maybe a friend might see it, but they're not necessarily doing the sales process, the client attraction process, one-on-one with people. And so that, I think, is the difference. That means I am comfortable in selling to friends. I am comfortable with that uncomfortable conversation, and I'm able to ascertain people's level of excitement or interest in hearing further or moving further along one-on-one. So the key to conversion, i.e. getting the sale when you make the pitch, is actually the step before. The step before is making the invitation. It's the invite stage. The invite stage is not inviting someone to check out your offer, right? It could be, but in a lot of cases, the invite stage is actually asking qualifying questions. You're inviting people to step towards being a lead in your business, and they take that step when they answer a question. They take that step when they disclose some information or ask a question of you. So an example of this would be if, for example, I said to someone on a one-to-one conversation, we're chatting on Messenger, and then I'll say, well, what is your income goal for the next 3 months? And they say 10K plus. And then I might ask, great, that's so exciting. What are you mainly focused on selling? The answer to that question will tell me, 1, where they are at in their journey, 2, which of my products or services might be the best fit, but also 3, the extent to which the strategy they're thinking of is aligned with the strategy that I teach. And sometimes it will raise a flag for me of, oh no, this person's still convinced that they, for example, in startup, they're better off selling low ticket. And the model that I teach is that for most people in startup, selling high ticket is the fast track to highly profitable, aligned and sustainable business. So then it might mean that there's a bit more nurture that needs to happen. There's a bit more conversation that needs to happen before stepping into the sales pitch. But that process and those questions and the way that I have that conversation has been developed over time and with a lot of practice. And breaking it down into the client attraction process is how I fast track other people learning how to do this and creating that sense of comfort and knowing exactly what to ask and say to ensure that at each step along that client attraction journey, both people are enthusiastic and feeling good about where it's going, and that it's a valuable relationship, it's a valuable connection. The key to feeling confident and comfortable with your invite stage of the client attraction process is being confident and comfortable and knowing what to do in the nurture stage of the client attraction process. And the key to being comfortable and confident with the nurture stage of your client attraction process is getting comfortable with the reach stage of your client attraction process. And so making sure that you are building those skills and learning how to facilitate that process with people one at a time absolutely fast tracks your ability to do that one to many as well. So an example of this for me in my early stages of my business was I had a friend who I knew was trying to sell her jewelry at the markets, and my niche at the time was artists and creatives and craft people who wanted to make more sales. I was doing business coaching and mentoring for very creative, proper artists and craft people and all that kind of thing. And so I reached out to her and said, hey, I'm not sure if you've seen, I've started my business and I'm focused on helping artists and creatives and crafters just like you to make more sales with online channels. And I know you mostly sell at the markets, but would you be interested in a couple of free coaching sessions to see if you could use social media to increase the sales that you're making? And she said, absolutely. We did a couple of those sessions and I gave her very valuable advice. I was really in there with her working on those things. And then it came to the end of our 2 free sessions and my next step was to do that qualifying, right? Is to make that invitation. And so I asked her what she thought of the work we'd done together so far. I asked her what her next steps were, what she saw as the future pathway for her business. And one of the things she said when I asked that was she wanted to actually set up an online store on her website and use socials to actually make more sales direct to the public rather than going to the markets. And so I literally got the opportunity to say, well, that's something I could help with. Do you want me to tell you how we could do that together in a coaching package? And she said yes, and she ended up buying a $1,000 package from me. So practicing the one-to-one nurture by giving free business coaching was one of the ways that I got that practice. But as my business progressed, I did free coaching less and less. I only really offered free coaching proactively one-on-one to people that I was comfortable doing that for free, even if it never resulted in any upsell or anything further. Because when I offered to do free coaching and mentoring to people, to strangers on the internet, 90% of the people who said yes either didn't show up or didn't do the things that we agreed to on the session. Or like I had some people who'd come to those sessions and say, I'm not interested in paying you for anything ever. I'm just here for the free coaching, so don't try and sell to me. And that's very awkward too, right? I don't like the awkward. I don't like the embarrassing. I don't like the uncomfortable. And so I could see that where I offered to do that for free to strangers online, it was very different to where I was very selective and only offered to do that for free for friends and family, in essence, for people that I had a very high level of connection with or already had an existing relationship with. So in getting that practice, I could see I needed to come up with new ways to initiate those relationships without necessarily doing lots of free business coaching one-on-one with people on Zoom calls. And so I chose two pathways. One was to do that nurturing in more like DMs and comments and sending people resources or tools or templates. So I was doing that with strangers more consistently, doing like free nurturing, free advice, but doing that in more of a disconnected way. So it wasn't necessarily me being on a call with them for free. It was more just someone said, oh, I don't know how to structure a blog. I would say, I've got a blog structured template. Do you want me to email it to you? And they say, yes, please. Great. And then I would email it to them and then I'd ask them some questions. So I learned how to do a little bit more of that qualifying in messages and in emails. But also I experimented with charging for those initial sessions. One of the challenges I had when I tried to offer free sessions to strangers on the internet was a lot of the people were actually not qualified, in that they didn't necessarily want to invest in business coaching. They didn't actually see the value in investing in getting support, but they'd take a free offer. And so by just putting a little tiny price tag on those initial sessions, the people who signed up for them showed up in a different way, but also even if it was only $25 that they were able to invest or willing to invest at that point in time, they were willing to invest to get that support and that help. So there were ways that I then scaled out how I attracted those connections, how I attracted those leads. And even when I started to do that more at scale, the key to getting the sale and to making the sales pitch feel comfortable was qualifying. It was asking really good qualifying questions and learning how to navigate that conversation based on their answers, learning what a specific answer told me about their willingness, their readiness, and how aligned the fit was between what they wanted and what they saw as their steps ahead versus what I would do with them if we were to work together. And so then that informed my content strategy. That informed how I would message further afield, because I had such depth of insight from those qualifying questions, from those conversations I was having with people who were potential leads in my business. So ultimately, the reason why I can sell to friends, can sell to anyone really without feeling uncomfortable about it, is because I never pitch to someone unless I know that they're keen to hear it. And the reason why I'm so clear on whether someone's keen to hear it or not is because I have become very skilled at qualifying. And the reason why I became skilled at qualifying was that I did it so much one-on-one. I still do it one-on-one a lot to this very day. And what got me the opportunity to practice qualifying one-on-one was the nurture, learning how to nurture connected relationships with people in my audience one-on-one at first, and then learning how to do that more at scale. Doing it in very high connection ways at first with those one-to-one Skype calls, and then learning how to do it via Messenger, learning how to do that via email, learning how to do that one-on-one, and then learning how to do that on webinars in a one-to-many format, learning how to do that one-on-one in those direct conversations, and then creating content that did it for me one-to-many. But I created my content based on what people were asking me for in one-on-one conversations. The advice that I was giving in one-to-one nurture that was really resonating and helping became the basis of my free content moving forward. So creating that high connection approach for me was the key to learning how to do these things at scale and to start to really grow my business. Plus, because I have become so skilled at getting that insight and understanding how keen someone is to hear the sales pitch, not only do I feel far more comfortable with it, I am very confident that I'm operating a very consent-driven, consent-based model of business, and I just don't feel like I'm spamming or being pushy or creating that awkwardness with anyone. And so it's a matter of choosing the discomfort, right? It was uncomfortable to send a message to my friend and say, hey, I don't know if you've seen, but I've got this business and I'd love to help you. Do you want a couple of free coaching sessions? It's good practice for me. That was uncomfortable because she could have said no, right? So I chose that discomfort, but in choosing that discomfort, I am able to avoid the discomfort of being a spammer, of being salesy, of feeling like I'm pushing my business upon my friends or my network. And so I totally understand that for some people, it's just like a hard line. Like I'll never sell to people that I know already, or I never sell to my friends. But I think in a lot of cases, that is actually stifling your ability to learn how to qualify well, to learn how to transition from one-to-one nurture into one-to-one invite, and to also be able to gain the insights you need to be able to improve your messaging and your one-to-many content strategies to be far more tangible, to be far more connected to the exact thing that people are hungry to read, that people are hungry to listen to. So there you have it. That's how to sell to friends without it being awkward and uncomfortable. Might not be quite the thing that you were expecting me to share, but hopefully you've found it helpful and valuable, whether you want to sell to friends or not. And if you are wanting to improve your sales skills, learn about consent-based sales, and also learn how to use high connection strategies to create very scalable sales and marketing strategies, I have a self-study course called Skyrocket Sales. And if you come over to the show notes of today's episode at tashcorbin.com/505, I'll have a little coupon code there for you so you can access the Skyrocket Sales program at the current best available price. Now, the Skyrocket Sales program is a step-by-step modularized course that you can do at your own pace, and it's really going to help you with some of those core sales skills, understand more about the client attraction process. There's an entire module on consent-based marketing and consent-based sales that a lot of people find very valuable and helpful. And it can really help you to overcome a lot of that awkwardness and discomfort with sales because we're breaking down the sales strategies into the components and seeing which strategies are aligned and which are not aligned for you. And so rather than just trying to teach you to white knuckle your way through sales and get really uncomfortable and just be really spammy and pushy, this course helps you to see that some sales strategies just aren't the right fit, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing sales at all. So if you'd like to learn how to improve your sales skills, skyrocket those sales and doing it in a consent-based way, if you come to the show notes at tashcorbin.com/505, you'll be able to access it with that coupon to get the current best available price. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast. And until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now. A quick reminder before you go that the Takeoff program is going up by $500 on the 27th of February. So come and check out the program, see for yourself just how comprehensive it is, and of course, get enrolled if you feel like it's the right fit for you at tashcorbin.com/takeoff.